When Ultimate Spider-Man came out, it was a blessing. Not only because it was the one good Spider-Man comic to come out from the heaps of modern slop, but also because it gave fans what they wanted. And what it would be like if Peter was actually allowed to grow and mature and one day have kids with his one and only soulmate, Mary Jane Watson. It was the one comic where Peter wasn't treated as a punching bag for Marvel, and for once, Peter was allowed to have some sort of happy life, even if it's in an alternate universe. But while the series has some really good things, it's not perfect. And over the months, fans started to notice a small drop in quality, and even going so far to say the series has fallen off. While the series isn't as full of hype as it was when it first came out, I wouldn't go so far to say the series has gone down to trash, since I think there are still some things to enjoy. But if I were to say there was one problem with the series, I would say it would be the 1 month time jumps. As you can see, each issue takes place over a month. So after each issue, a month passes by. One issue would take place in September, the next takes place in October, the next in November, and you get the idea. So for each issue, you can tell that time passes by, like for most people's lives. But it seems like too much time has passed. And even though there are like 20 issues, it feels like we barely got to know the Parker family. You know, the selling point of the series. And it seems like things are moving way too fast. And sometimes it feels like playing catch up with when you have some of the cliffhangers for each issue. I think the problem with these monthly time jumps is that it doesn't let the series take time to breathe. And every time there is a time jump, some stuff has happened off panel, and we have to figure out what happened since then. Now, I'm not saying each issue has to take place one day after, but it would be nice to fill in some gaps for some story arcs. The one example I could think of when the time jump started to become a problem is when Peter and Harry were trapped on the Savage Land, and Richard Parker, Peter's son, all of a sudden starts wearing the suit, which is quite a surprise, but it would have been nice to see that moment when Richard started to wear the suit, or what made Richard even decide to wear the suit. Or another example being how the Parkers had to go on the run, and this story arc lasted for about like three or so issues before Peter would then go back to New York with Harry. But we only got like one issue where we got to spend time with the Parkers. And the rest was mostly about Harry and Uncle Ben, who are good characters, don't get me wrong. But eventually Peter would go back to New York, and by then it would have been like 3 months. But it didn't really feel like that. And it feels like another problem with the series is that this series focuses too much on Harry and Uncle Ben, and less of Peter or the Parker family. Another example is when we get the reveal where this version of Black Cat, surprise surprise, was revealed to be working for the Kingpin and betraying Richard. But the next issue after that night, Richard is fine, and we would only get a flashback of what happened since then. Since this series has to time jump every month, and the most we could get are flashbacks. And just recently, in the newest issue, we time jump not 1 month, but 3 months this time. And we never got to see Harry's reaction to his wife's supposed death. I say supposed because I honestly don't believe Gwen is actually dead, but Uh, but who knows? Maybe eventually we'll find out if it's actually true. But it's crazy to think that the Parker family has been on the run for about 5 months. And we've only gotten like 10 issues with the Parker family at their home. And unfortunately, there isn't much time left since the series is going to end in a couple of months. So I can guarantee that Jonathan Hickman is going to speedrun this series and probably speedrun some plot lines that he had been planning step by step. Thanks to Marvel editorial. Typical Marvel editorial. Now there are probably some other problems to think of, but aside from that, I do think the series can still be quite enjoyable. Even though there are some flaws with this series. But it is really unfortunate that the series is going to be ending so early after only like 24 issues. And while it is possible that the series might just renumber, since Marvel likes to do that for some reason, it won't really be the same since Jonathan Hickman might not return, and the series would be left to some other writer that doesn't understand what made the series special. But I guess it could be for the best, since at this point, it would be best if the series ended on a good and high note before Marvel or some other bad writer ruins it and the series actually goes downhill.